Picture this: Los Angeles, 1932. The Olympic Stadium is electric. 80,000 people are on their feet. The gun fires, and a young man from Warsaw, a butcher's son who trained on muddy city streets with no coach and barely any money, explodes off the starting line. 10,000 meters later, he crosses the finish line in first place. Poland had its gold medal. Poland had its hero. His name was Janusz Kusociński. 8 years later, the same man who made Poland cry tears of joy was kneeling at the edge of a mass grave in a silent forest, hands bound, eyes blindfolded, as a Nazi executioner raised a pistol to the back of his head. He was 33 years old. No trial, no charge, no last words recorded, just a gunshot, and then silence. This is not just a war story. And this is the story of how the Third Reich tried to murder an entire nation's soul, one bullet at a time. And it happened in a forest the world almost forgot. If you're new here, welcome to WWW2 Time Tales, where we tell the true stories of World War II that most history classes never reach. The unfiltered, the forgotten, the ones that demand to be remembered. Subscribe right now and hit that bell, because what we cover here will change the way you see this war forever. Now, stay with me, because this story only gets darker from here. September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland. Most people think of the invasion as a military event. Tanks rolling across borders, cities bombed from the air. And yes, that happened. But what followed the tanks was something far more calculated, far more sinister. When the Nazis didn't just want Poland's territory, they wanted to lobotomize Polish civilization. And the brain of that civilization, the city they feared more than any army, was Warsaw. Here's how serious this threat was to them. By 1939, Warsaw had over 900 schools and universities, nearly 200 museums, libraries, and theaters. More than 50% of Poland's entire national press was published within its city limits. Roughly 40% of Poland's entire university population lived and studied there. Warsaw wasn't a capital, it was a fortress of the Polish mind. Nazi ideologues understood something brutal and true. You cannot permanently conquer a people who still have their teachers, their writers, their priests, their athletes, their leaders. The educated class, the people who inspire, organize, win and give others something to fight for, had to be destroyed first. They called this targeted group the Polish leadership class, and they had a plan to eliminate them entirely. On September 28, 1939, Warsaw surrendered. 3 days later, SS Brigadeführer Lothar Beutel's Einsatzgruppe 4, a mobile death squad trained specifically for this kind of cultural execution, entered the city. Within days, the arrest began. On October 8, 1939 alone, 354 Polish teachers and Catholic priests were dragged from their homes. Warsaw's prisons, Pawiak, Mokotów, the Gestapo fortress at 25 Sucha Avenue, were overflowing within weeks. The city was being bled of its finest people, one arrest at a time. But Warsaw was a city of witnesses. Neighbors talked. Underground networks were already forming, shooting people in the gardens behind the Parliament building, which they did, executing several hundred people between October 1939 and April 1940, was becoming impossible to hide. The Nazis needed somewhere private, somewhere the screams wouldn't travel. They found a forest, 30 kilometers northwest of Warsaw, a small, quiet village called Palmiry, surrounded by dense pine trees, far enough from the city that gunshots dissolved into the wind, close enough to run prisoners out and back in a single night. The Nazis chose it with precision. They prepared it with cold efficiency. Large pits were dug in advance, some over 30 meters long and nearly 3 meters deep. The digging was done by members of the Reich Labor Service and, in a detail that should make your stomach turn, Hitler Youth. Teenage boys digging graves for professors and politicians. On execution days, local forestry workers were sent home. German police sealed the entire surrounding area. Not a single civilian was allowed near the tree line. Then the trucks came. Prisoners were loaded out of Pawiak under an elaborate lie, told they were being transferred to another prison or sent to a labor camp. To make the deception convincing, they were allowed to pack personal belongings. Some were handed extra food. Some were even given back their identity documents. Think about how calculated that is. They fed them. They gave them hope. Because a prisoner who believes they are being relocated doesn't fight back, doesn't scream, doesn't warn the person next to them. But the lie had a shelf life. As weeks turned to months, whispers of Palmiry spread through Warsaw's underground networks. Prisoners began to suspect. Some, riding in the darkness of those trucks, desperately scrawled notes on scraps of paper and threw them through the cracks. Last messages to families they knew they'd never see again. Post-war forensic investigators found some of those notes still folded inside the clothing of the dead. They read, "Executed in Palmiry." At the site, whatever hope remained was stripped away in seconds. Bags confiscated, hands bound, eyes blindfolded. Some victims were forced to grip a pole behind their backs, a grotesque technique designed so that when they were shot, their bodies would fall forward into the grave in a neat, stackable layer. They were murdered with the same organizational efficiency the Nazis applied to everything else. And then, and even more horrifying, post-war forensic examinations confirmed that some victims were buried alive, wounded, conscious, suffocating beneath the earth, while the executioners filled in the pit above them. Afterward, graves were covered with moss, pine needles, and freshly planted trees. Families received letters saying their loved ones had died of natural causes. But one man refused to let the forest keep its secret. A local forester named Adam Herbansky risked his own life, and the lives of his colleagues, to silently map the location of every grave. He passed the coordinates to the Polish underground. Resistance members even managed to steal photographs taken by the German executioners themselves and eventually smuggle those images to London. The truth was being hidden, but it was also being saved. Now, Janusz Kusociński, born January 15, 1907, in Warsaw, the son of a butcher. No privileged upbringing, no fancy athletics program. He trained the way poor kids with great talent always train, obsessively on whatever surface he could find, with whatever shoes he had. By his mid-20s, he had become the greatest distance runner Poland had ever produced. At the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics, he ran the 10,000 meters in a time of 30 minutes and 11.4 seconds, setting a new Olympic record and winning gold for Poland. He didn't just win, he dominated. He ran with such composure and precision that even the American crowd, watching a foreign athlete beat their own, gave him a standing ovation. Back in Warsaw, he was greeted like a king. He was more than an athlete. He was proof, living, breathing proof, that a Polish boy from a working-class Warsaw family could stand on top of the world. And here is the part the history books often skip. Kusuchinski had a full life beyond sport. He was known for his warmth, his humor, his deep love of Warsaw's cafe culture, the kind of man who charmed everyone in the room. Friends described him as someone who laughed easily and loved deeply. He had the kind of spirit that made people around him feel like things were going to be okay, even when they weren't. When the war came in 1939, he didn't run from it. He fought in the September campaign. When Warsaw fell, he joined the Polish underground, the secret resistance network operating beneath the surface of Nazi occupation. He used the same discipline and endurance that won him Olympic gold to serve his occupied country. When on March 28, 1940, the Gestapo found him. He was arrested, thrown into Pawiak prison, and, according to survivors who witnessed it, brutally beaten during interrogation. By the time they came for him, the man who had once run 10,000 meters without breaking form could barely walk. June 20th to 21st, 1940. 3 transports rolled out of Pawiak over the course of 2 days. When the last truck returned to the city, 358 people had been executed, the single largest massacre in Palmiry's blood-soaked history. The Nazis had specifically curated this transport. This wasn't random. These were Poland's finest. Maciej Rataj, former Speaker of the Polish Parliament. Mieczysław Niedziałkowski, one of Poland's most prominent socialist leaders. Parliamentarians, district governors, lawyers, journalists, industrialists, professors, artists. 82 women were among the dead, and Janusz Kusociński, Olympic gold medalist, resistance fighter, the pride of Warsaw, was shot and buried in the same sandy forest soil as the best of his nation. He was 33 years old. Two other Polish Olympians died with him that day: sprinter Felix Zuber and cyclist Tomasz Stankiewicz. Three men who had competed for glory on the world's greatest sporting stage, murdered in a forest clearing, buried without ceremony. The scale of the loss was almost incomprehensible. In 2 days, the Nazis had attempted to cut out the intellectual and cultural heart of a nation. This operation wasn't improvised. It had a title, a budget, and a chain of command. It was called AB Action, Außerordentliche Befriedungsaction, the Extraordinary Pacification Operation. Its official goal, the complete elimination of the Polish intelligentsia and leadership class. On July 23, 1940, Governor-General Hans Frank officially declared AB Action complete. It was a lie. The killings at Palmiry continued through 1940 and into 1941. The last confirmed execution took place on July 17, 1941, only ending because the secret had finally leaked. The name Palmiry had appeared in the underground press. Reports reached London. The forest could no longer function as a killing ground because too many people knew it existed. Between 1939 and 1941, nearly 1,700 people, possibly more, were murdered in that forest, gone, erased, buried under trees. Hans Frank himself, in a private diary entry dated December 14th, 1943 wrote, "There is one place in this country which is a source of all our misfortunes. It is Warsaw. Without Warsaw, we would not have 4/5 of the trouble we are facing now." He feared Warsaw even as he was destroying it. The architects of Palmiry did not all escape justice. SS Gruppenführer Paul Motor, who commanded the execution squads in the Warsaw district, was killed in action on the Eastern Front in February 1942. Not a courtroom, but gone. Ludwig Fischer, governor of the Warsaw district, who oversaw the entire terror campaign, was tried by Poland's Supreme National Tribunal after the war and executed in March 1947. Joseph Meisinger, the man known throughout occupied Warsaw as the Butcher of Warsaw, the security police commander who personally organized the transports to Palmiry, was also tried and hanged in 1947. And Hans Frank, the man who ran the general government, who wrote about fearing Warsaw in his private diary while ordering its people murdered, stood before the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity, hanged on October 16, 1946. Justice, when it arrived, was final. Today, a cemetery and national museum stand in the Palmiry forest. The mass graves have been excavated, bodies have been identified, names have been carved into stone and set beneath the pine trees where they fell. Janusz Kusociński has a grave there now, a proper one with his name on it. The man who ran faster than almost anyone alive in 1932, who came home and fought for his country, who was beaten and shot and buried in silence, was finally given his name back. But names on stone are not enough. They need to be spoken, shared, argued over, kept alive in conversations like this one, in videos like this one, in the stubborn refusal to let the darkest chapters of history fade into comfortable forgetting. If this story affected you, if it made you feel the weight of what was lost, then do something with that feeling. Share this video. Put it in front of someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below with the name Janusz Kusociński so the algorithm knows this story matters, so the world keeps saying his name. And if you want more stories like this, the real ones, the hard ones, not the ones that change how you understand this war, subscribe to WW2 Time Tales and hit that notification bell. We post regularly, and every single story we tell is one that deserves to be remembered. We'll see you in the next one.